My amendment strikes funding for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, Security Investment Program. My amendment would strike over $433 million in NATO funding from the bill. America should not be doling out hundreds of millions of dollars to international organizations to help them fight their enemies, especially when they are unwilling to fight for themselves.
I think the sponsor of the amendment has shown pretty clear evidence that she has no idea what the NATO Security Investment Program is actually funding. We're talking about funding that is provided to build infrastructure that takes care of our troops that are overseas.
Okay, so let me see if I understand this. Don't fund NATO. We need to keep America secure, but only at the southern border. That's some MAGA logic right there. Well, MAGA logic or Russian propaganda, it can be pretty hard to tell the two apart lately.
One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want.
It is pretty rich for Donald Trump to lecture anyone about not paying their bills. His speeches feel so stream of consciousness, up until the point that he directly quotes Russian state media or a certain German dictator he's allegedly quite fond of. It's jarring and unsettling to know that, yes, this man is an absolute idiot, but he's also entirely amoral, and that has proved to be an extremely appealing combination for a lot of Americans. Politicians like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tommy Tuberville have made a career out of causing chaos, but it absolutely feels like somebody is pulling the strings at this point.
How many TV clips have you seen of a battle in Ukraine? Zero in the last 6, 7, 8 months. It's one-sided. Putin just kind of sitting back, watching what's going on, wondering, hey, when y'all gonna come over and we'll draw a line here. He doesn't want Ukraine. He doesn't want Europe. Hell, he's got enough land of his own. He just wants to make sure that he does not have United States weapons in Ukraine pointing at Moscow.
Can you imagine having that man as your football coach, let alone your senator? It is just unbelievable that we have come to a point where Tommy Tuberville is representing anybody, even himself. A quick Google search would tell any other potential employer that he's a disaster in terms of his knowledge, in terms of his experience, even in terms of geography, because allegedly he doesn't even live in Alabama. He lives in Florida.
Alabama's newly elected Senator Tommy Tuberville is showing an alarming lack of knowledge about how the government works in one of his first interviews since defeating Democrat Doug Jones.
You know, our government wasn't set up for one group to have all three of branches of government. It wasn't set up that way. Or three branches, you know, the House, the Senate, and the executive.
Now, the three branches are, of course, the executive, the legislative, which is both the House and the Senate, and the judiciary. But he didn't stop there. Here is what Senator-elect Tuberville said about his fears that Democrats are pushing the country toward socialism.
You know, as I tell people, my dad fought 76 years ago in Europe to free Europe of socialism.
It's not the first time that he's told that story about World War II. This is what he said on election night.
My dad, as you know, I said this last time, he quit school at 16, joined the Army, landed at Normandy at 18, drove a tank across Europe. He said, I've never gotten the look on the people's face in Paris when we liberated Paris from socialism and communism.
So he biffed it. He biffed all of it. The branches of government, he has no idea what they are. And by the way, do you think he'd have an issue if the GOP was the one controlling all three? But he did get one thing right from a certain conservative point of view, and that is the rewriting of what World War II was fought over. Tuberville isn't alone in pretending to accept at face value the Nazi label of National Socialism. All of their politicians, all of their media know that it was a fascist movement, but they pretend not to, in the very same way that they pretend not to see that the intellectual heirs of that movement now constitute a bigger and bigger part of their own base, their own think tanks, and their own influencers. And I get it. If my party was growing more and more comfortable throwing up that old straight arm salute or donning the white hood, I'd probably want to change the subject too. And that is all that Tuberville is doing here. It's just that he's such an unrepentant moron that he can't help but do a terrible job of it. So sure, get him out of office. Purge the halls of government of people too stupid to be trusted to tie their own shoes, let alone manage our country. But while you're doing it, spare a thought for the larger ideological forces at play.
When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?